So I was wheeling with one of my buddies about a few weeks ago, and while he's out on the trail, his transfer case started slipping and make some grinding sounds. So he's pulled that out today. He's bringing it over to the house, and we're gonna do a complete rebuild on that transfer case. Hey guys, the transfer case has been complete. However, I wanted to make another video to put in front of the actual rebuild video so you guys understand what you're getting into. One of the problems that we ran into this transfer case is the snap rings. And I can't say it's a problem, it's just very time consuming. So understand when you do this project, a lot of time will be spent fighting those snap rings, trying to get them off of there. Sean and myself sat there and played with them, so having that extra set of hands is gonna make a big difference for you. Another thing we ran into was the silicone sealant that holds the halves together, that holds the tail housing on. That was pretty tough initially to get that separation started. So we went through, we cleaned up all the silicone as best we could, kind of scored a razor blade in between to try to get the seal started. And like it says in the video, you're going to see some little notches that you can put a screwdriver in there and help to pry that up. And once you start getting that going, make sure you're helping to release that silicone from the mating surfaces, and that will allow it to pull up a little bit easier. It took some extra time. Again, it was our first time doing this, so we didn't want to take a chance on damaging anything. There was no problem with that. We eventually got it off, but we were kind of taking it easy. But just so you understand, it's going to be a little bit of work to get those halves apart. Some of the special tools that you're going to need, obviously you guys saw the blind bearing puller. That's a tool that you're going to have to buy. I'm not sure what the cost is on that. You're going to need a fixed tip set of snap ring pliers. I'll see if I can add a link to the description. That's going to help you tremendously in getting those snap rings off. Another special tool that you're going to need that you may already have is going to be a good seal driver set. You know what, I have one from Harbor Freight and that thing works pretty good. I'm not a big Harbor Freight fan when it comes to electrical or pneumatic type of devices. I have a couple, but I'm not a big fan of it. But their seal driver kit is fine. I use it for installing gears, and it was fine for pressing in the seals in the transfer case. Hey, if you guys are liking the content that you're getting here, do me a big favor, please subscribe. That helps out. When I see the subscriptions coming in, I know that there's an interest in this. That interest is what drives me to do more videos. I'm on a pretty good streak right now. I have a whole lot of projects in the pipeline, just trying to find the time to get to them, especially now that it's wheeling season. I'm going to spend a lot of my time up in the trails, but I'll be getting these videos out as often as I can. But please subscribe. That helps me understand that there is definite interest in these videos, and I'll keep them coming. This transfer case uses the Novak slip yoke eliminator kit. If your transfer case has a different kit, just be sure to document it very well so you know how things come apart and how they go back together. In this first series of videos, it's as simple as removing the output yoke and then getting the tail housing separated from the case. Now in this case here, once you get the tail housing off, you're going to find a plastic speedometer gear on the inside. It's kind of a pain in the rear to get the thing out of there, but be careful not to damage it, because if you do, you're going to have to wait on another part to come in, and you can't put your transfer case back together until that part comes in, unless you decide to run without a speedometer.
There it goes.
You got it now? You need to push down on that while you're doing that?
Give me a wedge to
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. How about that? Is that going to be enough?
Yep, that should work.
Thing is, we do one from the other side too, do it at the same time. There you go. Be careful that you break it, you're going to be out of service for a while. Next up, we got to get the snap ring off so we can get the oil pump out. Snap ring comes off fairly simple. The oil pump is very finicky. You kind of got to work it around a little bit in order to get it to come out. As you'll see in the video, we started taking the case half bolts out to see if we could access it from a different way, but we eventually got the oil pump out. So the video will look like it's out of sequence a little bit. Just understand that was one of our struggles.
That snap ring's already off. It's just gotta go from.
Is that alignment?
There
we go.
Sounds like it's working.
Let's crack this thing open, see what else you got going on. My impact wrench makes life a lot easier when removing bolts. Understand that you're dealing with an aluminum case here, so taking the bolts out with an impact wrench is absolutely fine. Putting it back together, I would strongly recommend not using the impact wrench, as you can strip out aluminum really easily. Now, as you see, Sean here is marking certain holes that different bolts came out of. There were 3 oddball bolts, so he's marking the holes there so he knows where they go back during assembly. Separating the case halves, it's kind of a pain in the butt because there's a lot of silicone there that's holding that thing together. So I used a screwdriver that had a flat shaft on it with my little crescent wrench, as you can see there, and that allowed me to get the tip of the screwdriver into the notches that are in the case. And then as you twist the screwdriver, it starts to separate a little bit. And then Sean was taking a painter's knife and starting to gain access in between the case halves until they finally popped up. Where's that other?
Right there.
There it is. Now that's your mating surface. Just be careful on that. There you go. Aha. Let me set that over here. Your tube. What's your filter look like?
It's clogged.
That's it. Here, put it up and see it
Got
right
some
here.
metal shavings in it too.
So part of his issue, you can see here the filter's got a bunch of debris in it, metal shavings. So this thing definitely needed to be, where'd this focus at? Definitely need to be rebuilt. The rebuild kit come with the new filter or no?
No, look at
Okay,
that.
so we just got to clean it.
Chain-
Oh, that chain was
chain
slapping all over everything.
Yep.
Hang on.
All the way around that edge.
Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that real good right through here. You see the chain rub through there, all the way around through here. That's horrible.
The chain rub.
Well, now we know what your excuse was for sucking on the trail.
Everybody's got one. My spotter sucks. Now that guy comes off.
Look at all that, wow. Old toast. That's good. I cannot stress enough during this process to stay organized. So as you're pulling parts out, lay them down in some sort of sequence on a table. Be sure to take pictures the entire way you're going so you know exactly how stuff goes back. Otherwise, you're going to fight this during reassembly. Make sure you pay attention to what order stuff's coming out so you know it all goes back together. So
in order to get the planetaries out, you have to take the input shaft. There's a little cover on there that you have to undo, and then underneath it there's a snap ring there. And he gets to that in just a little bit later in the
No, there's
video.
another blind bearing down.
There's a seal at your front drive shaft output housing that will have to be removed. Just bend the lips up and it'll pop right out.
hate these studs. It shouldn't be difficult coming out though. Can hold that for you.
Yeah. Ready?
Well, shit, that was easy.
One shot.
Sean has to take a seal out of there. You got to get it started. And as you're starting to pry up on it, just be careful because you're dealing with the mating surface of the seal and you don't want it to leak. So just be careful.
There you go. Gosh, what a pain in the butt. Make sure to keep them the same sequence you're pulling off, because you get them backwards, you're going to be.
Yep. So that just needs to get cleaned up because it's got a lot of crap in it.
That does. So that's everything apart then, right?
There's a bearing in there that needs to get pulled,
All right.
and there's another, and then this little plastic pieces get replaced. I thought there was another blind bearing somewhere. Is it on the other side of the planetary?
Yep.
Those get pulled.
Okay.
But I think this can go back together once I get
Might
it
as well
cleaned
do
up,
it right
since
now,
we don't need
exactly.
to Clean this guy, and then we back it up and see what it is.
No, that's it, yeah, that's it. Assembly lube. Do they say that they prefer to use that versus just lathering it in ATF?
Yeah.
No kidding. Your ATF would be enough, but. Actually, it's just small areas, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hang on.
Maybe sometimes they go on easier than they come on.
Yeah, but you don't want to bend that sucker either. Oh, you already have it?
No, I gotta get it down into the.
I'll hold
Into
that
the
while you
last
work the
groove
snap, and
now.
I'm not going to touch anything else but this.
Okay.
Straight across, don't get that. There you go.
Back's in.
There, that other side's on.
Okay.
You got to come back to this side. You may have to just. That it?
That's it.
Is that groove on that side?
Yep.
Looks like it. Rotate your bearing. Or your gear.
Nice and smooth. Okay. That shaft is done.
when you go to take your planetaries out and replace those plastic pieces in there, be sure to pay attention in the order this comes off. You have a snap ring that holds that metal piece in Sean's hand right now. Then you have a plastic piece. Then the gears come out, and then there's a plastic piece down below that as well. So when you go to do reassembly, make sure you get everything back in that right order. So as we're taking stuff apart, you're going to see this gear piece in here. It has a snap ring, but they say do not take that out because you end up damaging the housing. So this part stays in place. No, you got to have another plastic one on top, don't you?
It was underneath.
You had one above and one below.
Yeah, there's one.
Oh,
There's one in there.
okay.
Then there's one there, underneath that metal ring.
It wasn't above it.
No, the
Your
snap
plastic.
ring goes on next.
Okay. Yeah, then it's definitely not above it. All right. For some reason I thought it encased that thing.
Snap ring goes in now.
It'd be nice if they had the holes in it. Was that? They're over on the other side of the Jeep in a bucket. I have one though, you got cure holes, typical friction.
So now we need to pull this bearing.
So inside here you have a bearing that you need to pull out, and you have to use what's called a blind bearing puller, which is this device right here. You see how it's got the beveled edge down? You put that down in there, and as you screw this down, it spreads apart, and then you have to use a puller to pull it out.
I'll have to use a slide handle. Better now? Okay. Pulling that bearing out inside there if you want to get down in there and look.
That's pretty slick. That is pretty slick.
That.
So in the housing, we have another bearing right here that needs to be pulled. Again, using the blind bearing puller, we'll get that out. If you didn't see earlier, you can see the damage that the loose chain was doing all right through here.
Yeah, right there. For sure.
You didn't even hold it,
Why would it be the same size?
so what?
So why would it be the same size? Because this one's a different size.
Oh, what do you need then?
One size bigger.
Let's tweak on it too.
I gotta try and keep that. Try and- Okay.
Any luck?
Is this where you want me to turn the video off?
Yeah.
So what kit did you end up getting?
This is the advanced or Novap conversions kit.
How's all sorts of crap in there? Does it have part number somewhere? The box? Nothing. There we go. So if you guys look closely, you can see that Sean used assembly lube to put all this stuff together. And my understanding is it's designed to heat up and then dissolve as it is replaced by your transfer case fluid, which in this case should be ATF. In or after?
It says after. So it says to put this in first.
You remember because you when you were taking the bolts out, that fell underneath the back.
So when you're pushing that bearing over the planetaries of the housing there, you're going to have to get creative. I took a couple bearing races from some carrier bearings that fit perfectly. We use those to push in the bearing. Afterwards, we discovered you're not going to need that. The planetaries will bottom out the bearing before the bearing's all the way seated. So what we're doing here, although it worked initially, we were struggling on why we couldn't get the snap ring line to go down any further, and that's because the planetaries are there. So as you continue to watch the video, you'll see that we get the snap ring on there, then tap the bearing down, and everything fits in place.
Okay. Now we should finish driving that in.
Oh, we ran into a little bit of a snag while we were trying to put in the planetaries with that bearing. If you install it with the planetaries in place, the bearing here will bottom out up against the top of the planetary and not let that bearing set all the way in. So we pulled the planetaries back out, and then we tapped the bearing in the rest of the way with the snap ring on to where it's flush with the actual case half. Once you do that, then you can put your planetaries back in, but you have to kind of rotate them as you're installing them.
Now we put this snap ring on.
So now we have to put the input shaft snap ring on. And again, as you go through this process, make sure you're putting your assembly lube wherever it needs to go.
That's what this says.
So just go till it's flush.
Yep.
You have to RTD it.
Yep. I'm just dry fitting it to see how it looks, where the oil passage is. Everything sits flush. So that should be that. So now
Booyah. Yeah, right there. There's your ring right there. For
Okay.
it.
After you get the bearing installed, install your new seal.
Did that really slide in this?
Yep. It's in neutral right now, so.
All right, what'd you get done? You got your O-ring placed.
Okay, I got that O-ring replaced. Now I've pulled the O-ring out of the pump. New O-ring slides into the pump there.
Okay.
And then this seal is gonna get driven in here, which is pretty easy to go in.
Well, if it starts leaking, we'll know why.
Okay. Now that's ready to go. Repair on the unavailable filter.
So what's going on here, if you guys look, his screen broke and it was clogged up full of junk, so we blew it out, and we ended up taking ABS glue and gluing that screen shut again. The only reason we did that is because nobody in town has parts that are available within a week. So we made what I would consider a trailer garage repair, and then if he's ever in his T-case again or has problems, then we can replace it at that time.
That way.
Okay, I didn't want to bore you with all the details of putting your RTV on your cover here, but it's fairly straightforward. What is it, a 1/4-inch bead you said?
1/4-inch bead.
1/4-inch bead all the way around. Make sure you completely loop your bolt holes so that way you don't have any transfer case fluid coming out through that. And then as you start tightening those up, make sure you do them in a good sequence, kind of get them all a little bit, and then go through and do your final torque. Pretty boring stuff, but pretty straightforward. Do you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
No.
That was
Don't use
easy.
too much silicone.
Yeah, don't use too much RTV.
So this is the pickup tube for the oil pump. So your oil pump is gonna go in with the seal down.
Has to go into here.
Has to go into there. So what you need to do is hold this kind of up at an angle with one hand. And then you want to get it started if you don't have a giant finger.
Looks like a pain in the ass. Is it better do it on its side, or is it better do it upright, or do you know better? Or just whatever one's gonna work on?
Whichever one's gonna work, yeah. Maybe lay it on its side and do it.
Okay.
Pull this back off.
So you have your oil pickup tube right here, and there's a little ring around it, and it actually has to push inside that hole and seal up against the O-ring.
So this is specific for an advanced adapters short yoke elimination kit. This is the Speedometer gear install. So first thing we're gonna do is install a snap ring here that holds the oil pump in place.
Cockeyed.
Yep. Pressure's on.
There you go.
That's not the groove it goes into, but we're just gonna stop there to straighten everything out.
All the way down.
All the way down until it's clipped in.
You know it's clipped in because it will sit here and spin still, where if it's on your splines, it won't. So make sure you're clipped all the way in.
And then this is the Speedometer gear drive that drives your speedometer.
That thing went on a hell of a lot easier than it came off, I'll tell you that.
And I bet it'll come off that hard next time too.
Yep.
And now the next clip.
Same thing. Once it's in the groove, it spins around just fine.
And the last thing to do is reinstall the actual tail housing. Fill it with fluid and see how bad it leaks. One thing to keep in mind on the tail housing for the advanced adapters kit, you have these notches here. They have to line up with the notches on the pump.
That's normal.
That's how long my pressure lasts.
But that's good. At least that happened. Got anti-seize.
Aviation Formagasket. Just put a little dab on the threads and it'll seal the threads as they go in.
Oh, no kidding. All right. How's it different than normal thread sealer, do you know?
I don't, it's aviation.
From like a normal Loctite or something.
That I don't know.
So if this is going to be your first time rebuilding a 231 transfer case, it'll probably take you between 6 and 8 hours, depending on whether you have to take breaks while you're filming like we are, or whether you got to take an hour to clean stuff up. Depends on how detailed you're going to get. And this build right here took us just about 7 hours. That included a lunch break and all that other stuff. So plan on a full day and plan on having another vehicle in case you get behind on something or if you lose a part.
All right, on the Speedometer gear, you'll see on the side here, it's got numbers. Those numbers correlate to the amount of teeth on this gear. If you do not have that lined up properly, when you insert that and lock it down, then your speedometer will not work.
New O-ring.
New O-ring is installed. So those numbers line up so that when you bolt that in,
Oh, the fork goes on there like.
the fork,
Gotcha.
that's what holds that in. Those numbers, I made a mark on my case with which numbers were there based on my speedometer gear.
There we go.
All right, the rebuild of the 231 is complete. If you have free time and you enjoy working on things, it's definitely something you can do at home with the purchase of a few tools and still come out ahead, priced out. They're usually $700 to $800 to have it rebuilt. I think I'm in this tools and a rebuild kit for about 320 bucks.
And beer.
And beer. So,
See ya.
thanks for watching.